It was a Friday evening, the kind where the city lights blinked lazily through a thin veil of mist, softening the edges of the world. Inside the small bakery cafe on the corner of Willow and Hartman, the air was warm and heavy with the scent of fresh bread, cinnamon, and melting chocolate. The shop's old brass bell had chimed almost every 2 minutes as customers came and went, their boots tracking in tiny puddles from the drizzle outside. Low, golden lamps cast pools of light on polished wooden tables, and soft music somewhere between jazz and lullaby murmured in the background. Conversations blended into a comfortable hum, punctuated by the gentle clink of coffee cups and the occasional burst of laughter from the table near the window. But in the farthest corner, away from the chatter, sat Emily. She had chosen the corner deliberately, not for the privacy, but because it allowed her to see without being seen. She rested her forearms on the table, fingers absently tracing the rim of a plain white plate. The plate was empty except for a single paper box, her cake, waiting patiently for its moment. To the rest of the world, Emily was the daughter of Charles Harrow, one of the most influential CEOs in the city. His picture was in the business section of the newspaper almost weekly. Handshakes with foreign dignitaries, ribbon-cutting ceremonies, charity galas, where he and her mother stood in gleaming evening wear. Her childhood had been one of chauffeured cars, vacations in places people only saw on postcards, and birthday parties so large that the catering bill alone could have funded a small town's festival. But tonight was different. Tonight, there was no chauffeur, no crowd of friends, no flowers or champagne flutes. Just Emily, sitting alone, a soft cardigan draped over her shoulders, and her wheelchair tucked close to the table so it wouldn't block the aisle. It had been 2 years since the accident. 2 years since the world had turned upside down on a wet stretch of highway. She remembered the sound first, metal screaming against metal, glass shattering into the roar of wind and rain. Then the stillness after, a stillness so absolute it felt unnatural. She'd woken up in the hospital with a dozen tubes attached to her, and a doctor with kind eyes telling her the words no one ever wants to hear. You won't walk again. In the weeks that followed, her phone buzzed constantly. Messages, flowers, friends dropping by. But as the months passed, the visits slowed. The calls came less often. People she'd once spent every weekend with suddenly became too busy. Some didn't know how to act around her anymore, stumbling through conversations, eyes darting anywhere but at the wheelchair. Others simply stopped showing up, their absence explained away with vague texts and unreturned calls. And so, she learned to adapt to the silence. Her parents, still busy with the demands of their world, tried to fill the gap with gifts, clothes she didn't wear, gadgets she didn't use. She smiled and thanked them. But things like that didn't fill the spaces left by lost friendships. It was the laughter she missed most, the kind that made your stomach ache. The feeling of being included without question, of being someone's first thought, not their afterthought. Tonight was her 23rd birthday. She'd told herself she didn't want to make a big deal out of it. She told herself this every year since the accident. But deep down, she knew the truth. She avoided parties because she feared no one would come. So she decided on something small, a cake from a bakery she liked, one candle, maybe a cup of tea, a quiet evening. The cake sat in the box in front of her now, a small, round vanilla sponge with buttercream frosting and delicate sugar flowers around the edge. She'd picked it herself that morning, smiling politely at the woman behind the counter when she asked if it was for a special occasion. Just for tonight, Emily had said, careful not to elaborate. Now, sitting in the cafe, she glanced at the single candle lying beside it. Lighting it felt almost silly, like playing at a ritual meant for someone else. But part of her still wanted to. Birthdays had a way of tugging at that childish hope, the quiet voice that whispered, maybe something good will happen today. She reached for her lighter, a small silver one she kept in her bag, more for candles at home than anything else. But her hands trembled slightly, not from the weight of the lighter, but from the heaviness of the moment. Her fingers fumbled once, then again before she let out a soft sigh and set it down. Around her, the cafe continued to breathe and bustle. A young couple at the table to her left leaned close, whispering in each other's ears. Two college students in hoodies tapped furiously at laptops, empty mugs stacking beside them. An older man read a newspaper, slowly turning the pages, pausing now and then to sip his espresso. No one looked at her, not yet. Emily's gaze drifted to the rain-speckled window. Outside, cars hissed past on wet pavement. Pedestrians hurried along, heads down, umbrellas bobbing. A few minutes passed like this, each one stretching just a little longer than it should have. She told herself she was fine. She was good at that, pretending. But the truth sat heavy in her chest. She thought of past birthdays, the year her friends surprised her with a rooftop picnic, the time her brother flew home early from college just to take her to her favorite restaurant. And then she thought of last year, sitting alone in her apartment, eating cake straight from the box with a fork. This year wasn't much different, except now she'd put herself in public, perhaps in the faint hope that someone would notice her. But she was just another face in the corner. She blinked quickly, willing away the sting in her eyes. Crying here, in the middle of the cafe, felt like giving the moment too much power. She didn't want pity. She didn't want the awkward glances people gave when they weren't sure whether to acknowledge your sadness or pretend they hadn't noticed it. Still, she couldn't shake the ache of wanting someone, anyone, to care enough to sit down beside her and say, "Happy birthday, Emily." At another table, 2 rows away from Emily's quiet corner, sat Marcus. He was a man in his mid-30s with strong, work-worn hands and the faintest shadow of stubble along his jaw. His plaid shirt was neatly tucked in, though the sleeves were rolled up to the elbows, revealing a watch whose leather band had cracked at the edges from years of wear. Across from him sat his daughter, Ava, a bright-eyed 6-year-old with a head of untamed curls that bounced every time she moved. Their table was modest, 2 mugs of hot chocolate, Ava's topped with a mound of whipped cream and sprinkles, and a single plate holding a shared chocolate croissant. The croissant had been carefully split down the middle, each piece placed on a napkin so Ava could eat hers without too many crumbs scattering to the floor. Marcus wasn't rich, far from it. He worked 2 jobs, one as a delivery driver during the day and another stocking shelves at a small grocery store at night. Some weeks he picked up extra shifts at a friend's auto repair shop just to cover the electric bill. But no matter how exhausted he felt, he carved out time each Friday evening to take Ava somewhere small and special. Sometimes it was the park, sometimes a free museum exhibit, and once in a while, when the budget allowed, a treat at this little bakery cafe. To Marcus, these moments mattered. They were proof to Ava, and maybe to himself, that life could still be good, even if it was far from easy. That evening, while Marcus sipped his coffee and watched the steam curl from Ava's cup, he noticed her gaze wander. She had a way of looking at people with curiosity that was pure, unfiltered, and without judgment. Her eyes landed on the far corner of the room. She tilted her head slightly, as though trying to figure something out. "Daddy," she whispered, leaning across the table. Marcus set down his cup. "What is it, Bug?" She nodded toward Emily's table. "Why is that lady all by herself?" Marcus followed her gaze. At first, he saw only the neat little table, the unopened cake box, and the single candle lying next to it. Then he looked at Emily. She was beautiful in a way that wasn't flashy. Soft, brown hair falling just past her shoulders, pale skin with a faint flush from the cafe's warmth, but her posture was slightly hunched, her shoulders carrying a weight that had nothing to do with her body. Her eyes, downcast, lingered on the table as though she was trying not to notice the world around her. Ava nodded enthusiastically. Without waiting for permission, she began singing "Happy Birthday," her voice clear and bright. Marcus joined in, his deep baritone blending with her high, sweet notes. A few heads turned. One couple smiled. A man at the counter chuckled softly and nodded toward them. Emily's face softened. The song wasn't perfect. Ava forgot the timing on the last line and giggled through it. But it didn't matter. It wasn't about perfection. It was about the fact that someone, 2 someones she'd never met before, had noticed her. When the song ended, Ava clapped her hands. "Make a wish!" Emily hesitated. Wishing had always felt a little dangerous, like setting herself up for disappointment. But tonight, maybe she could. She closed her eyes for just a moment, letting the hum of the cafe wrap around her, and wished, not for her old life back, not for something impossible, but for more moments like this. She blew out the candle, the smoke curling upward in a slow spiral. For the first time in a long while, Emily felt seen. If this story touched your heart, make sure to hit that like button. It really helps more people find these messages of kindness. And if you love hearing real, powerful stories like this one, don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss the next one. Thanks for watching. And remember, sometimes the smallest act of kindness can change a life.